Rapline is on location today. We're on the set of WMBB News 13 in downtown Panama City. We have a conversation today with Jerry Tabatt. Of course, you know him from the weather. He is senior meteorologist and community outreach coordinator here at WMBB. So Jerry, thanks for inviting us downtown.
Well, thank you for coming on down here. That's a long title and you got to stretch it out.
So you must have really big business cards.
No, I got little business cards with real tiny writing.
Oh, I got
I
you.
suppose I'm wearing glasses today.
So as many people know, grown up with you, many people watching you do the weather, forecast the weather, but I wanted to go back a little ways before we get into your weather forecasting here, but tell us a little bit about your background. Where is home for you?
Home is actually Jamestown, North Dakota. I was born and raised in a little town north of there called Carrington, but that's where I grew up, in North Dakota. I have 6 sisters and 1 brother, and when I graduated from high school, and I don't mind telling people, May of 1968, I joined the Air Force and spent 20 years in the Air Force with some really interesting assignments there. I had 4 years in Tokyo, Japan. That's probably one of the best things that ever happened to me assignment-wise. I had a year over in Korea, and this is where it was kind of good. I was the only Air Force guy assigned to an Army Intel division, so that was good. And then just around the States, spent 5 years in Tucson, and when it came to Tyndall, actually in 1979, that's when I went to Korea in 81, came back in 82, retired the 1st of August in 88, and I was going to Haney. I always wanted to be an electrician. It fascinated me. But I also liked the idea of meteorology, because I can remember as a child looking up and there's hail coming down and rain, and Mom grabbed me by the shirt collar and said, "Son, doesn't that hail hit you in the head and hurt?" And I said, "What hail?" I was so enthralled with it. But I was going to Haney, and about the middle of October, 2 months after I started, I came home and my wife says, "Jerry, Channel 13 wants you to do the weather for me." I said, "Okay, what, did she like bounce a check or something like that?" She finally convinced me to come down here, and apparently they'd called out to the base and found out what I could do and a little bit about me, and it's all history now. I went on the air in January of '89 and have been here ever since, and loving every second of it.
Well, you're certainly a joy to watch and a lot of fun, and a lot of people I talk to say, he just seems like such a nice guy. And I say, yeah, he is a nice guy.
I refuse to change. The way I am on the air, that's the way I am off camera. Well, I don't wear a suit off camera, but the way I look at it, why should I be different on the air and then in person somebody meets you and says, "Wait a minute, where's the correlation?" This is it. Like it or not, this is it. This is what you get.
So, Jerry, you mentioned your career in the Air Force prior to WMBB, and you were in meteorology there?
Yes, I was. I've actually, when I went in May of '68, that's where I started back then it was called Weather Observer School. So I've been doing this since 1968. So the experience is there, not only the Pacific, but the Atlantic and the Gulf now. So.
And so while you were in the Air Force, are there some particular weather events that really stand out in your mind that you dealt with?
Back in the early 70s when I was in Tokyo, there was a couple of typhoons that came close. But I think the biggest thing was the earthquakes in Japan. I mean, it was a daily occurrence. And when I got here it was April of '79 when I got here, and then in September, Hurricane Frederick was my first hurricane to deal with. So I dealt with the typhoons in the Pacific, but the hurricanes was a total new ballgame, because here, if something in the Gulf, you don't have much time. Over in Japan, you can watch it come across the whole ocean. So those storms are the ones that have really come to mind, and probably Hurricane Opal and Hurricane Ivan. That's probably the 2 most memorable storms for me here.
And we're going to talk a little bit more about Opal and Ivan. But back to your work in the Air Force, so talk to us about what kind of information that you would provide and what would happen because of that.
My main function as an Air Force meteorologist was to make sure that our fighter pilots got off the ground safely and got back safely. And it's a very large responsibility, because, when you're in the military like that, these missions you can't say, "Oh, well, we'll go tomorrow." Well, they've got to really have the technical support. And I guess briefing 4-star generals and telling them, sir, you can't fly, they understood it. And they'd say, okay, Sarge, when can we fly? So that was part of it. The other part of it is meeting individuals that would come through, especially here at Tyndall Air Force Base. For example, the Challenger astronauts. I knew every one of those except Kristen McAuliffe, the teacher. In fact, they were at Tyndall 4 days before they lost their lives. So, you know, those kind of things come to mind. I've been in Arizona where President Ford has come through and Secretary Kissinger and got a chance to meet them. So because I deal with pilots, they have to have a briefing before they can leave. You get to see a lot of those things. So it's really interesting. And the thing about it is it's not the same every day. I mean, if you sell automobile insurance, it's pretty much the same policy. But when we come in for weather, it may not be the same policy every day. So you have to be alert to the changes. So it makes it challenging, but it keeps you fresh, it keeps you aware, and that's the good part.
And we're going to talk about what it takes to get together a weather forecast for the news, a little bit about Opal and Ivan, but I want to remind you that you are listening and watching Rapline on GCTV and GC 90.7. Of course, we're not in our regular Studio A at the radio station. We've been invited out to WMBB News 13 in downtown Panama City, and my guest is meteorologist Jerry Tabatt. So, Jerry, what does it take to put together the weather for a TV newscast?
Well, most recently, people remember me being on the morning news for many, many years. People think that the news goes from 5 to 7, so I come to work at 4:30 in the morning. I'm not. I'm here about 2 o'clock in the morning when you work that shift because you have to put all those graphics together. Yes, the satellite pictures, the radar pictures, they're there, the basic information, but we have to refine them, we have to fine-tune them. And we also have to look at different things. We look at what's happening at the surface. We look at the upper airs. We look at forecasts that are coming down the line for our extended forecasts. All of that has to be put together, and any local hazards that there might be out there. Fog is probably the most difficult one to deal with because it's especially here when we get the sea fog. It comes in the afternoon and it's gone 10 minutes later, or it may come in and stay for 3 days. So all of those things have to be put together. And then once you get all your graphics and everything built, as you know, being in the media now, because of the hearing impaired, everything has to be closed captioning. So I have to sit there and type out a script for a weathercast, which is in a way kind of difficult. But then on the other hand, it's easy because we let our pictures tell the story for the visual part and our words the hearing part of it. So as a result, you just kind of tie it all together. So it takes a while to build it up. And then in addition to that, we have our radio partners, Powell Broadcasting. We have to put out radio forecasts also, and I'm sure you've heard that. So you stay busy. You stay busy.
Now talk to us about the green screen.
Oh, my magic screen.
Yeah, your magic screen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, first of all, these cameras that we have, they don't recognize the color green. So when I'm standing in front of a green wall, and it's a green wall, and I can be looking right into the camera, and you think, I'm looking at you. But I'm actually looking at a monitor in there. So when I look into the camera and point to Miami, it's not because I'm so smart and I know exactly where Miami is, it's because I can see where my finger is. So what happens, this green wall, because it's transparent, we're electronically hooked from our weather computers into our control room so they can superimpose the video behind us, and it looks like we're standing in front of it, but we're just in front of a blank wall.
And how much fun is it to put together weather?
It all depends on. Great weather, you know, and especially like if you have a lot of events like we're having in the fall, it's a lot of fun because you can be creative. But then there's times like hurricanes or severe weather or something, there's really no fun into it because we're driven by the fact that there's people out there that we're responsible for their safety. And we're not going to get on the air, and Justin and Tyler are the same way I am. We're not getting on the air and say, oh my goodness, Em, you need to run for cover. We aren't going to scare you, we're going to educate you. We try to be calm, cool, and collected about it so that we make you understand what's going on, but we can't force you to make any decisions. We just guide you, and fear is not one of the guides that we use. That doesn't work.
So tell me about the biggest impact on our weather here locally. Would it be sea breeze? Would it be El Nino? What seems to impact our weather the most?
Seasonal wise, now we're in what we call the El Nino impact, which means warmer out west of us brings cooler and wetter winters to us, which is a seasonal change that happens every few years. But we have to break it down summer versus winter. In the summertime, of course, it's the Gulf of Mexico with the moisture and the sea breeze. That's what causes these thunderstorms. And then you have to start worrying about where these thunderstorms collide with the sea breeze, the normal northerly land breeze. That's when you start to roll the ingredients towards severe weather. In the wintertime, it's the extreme cold air behind these cold fronts that smacks into that warm Gulf air. That's where we get those long, severe lines of thunderstorms. So during severe weather or during hurricanes or something like that, it's really difficult. For example, 2 years ago when we had that ice storm, it was amazing how we could sit there and just watch it come together. It didn't last very long, but we were out on the air telling people that yes, the possibility is there. And that's one thing about meteorology. We say we're the only inexact science. Mm-hmm. If you're looking for a blood test to see whether or not you have a certain disease, you can find it. But you can't sample a little tiny bit of the atmosphere and say, okay, that means everybody's going to have the same. So you got to try and roll the whole ball of wax into that. So it can get to be complicated, but at times like that, that's where you reach out to, I reach out to my fellow meteorologists here, Justin and Tyler, and we all kind of come together with a consensus on that.
Talk a little bit about the technology. I know from the 70s to now, it's changed so much. You know, what do you think is the biggest impact technology-wise?
I think the biggest impact is probably the invention of the internet and social media, because there's so many different things out there vying for your attention, vying for you to say, I'm the best on my weather. I know I'm the best, you're the worst in that. So what we have to do is we're dealing with all of that, but we need to let people realize that we stay local. We are not trying to draw visitors from all across the country. We stay local, so we'll focus locally. Yes, we'll tell you big events happening, but we stay locally with that internet, that social media. That is amazing. And then, of course, actual weather equipment. Your satellite is very, very helpful now. Back in the early days, we had 1 or 2 satellites. Now we've got a bunch of that. Plus, we have a whole string of more people reporting what the weather is like. A lot of them are online talking about that. Mm-hmm. So if something's happening to the west of you, weather moves from west to east. So eventually it's going to get to you. It may be in a modified form, but that's where we have to worry about. How much is it going to modify? Because you've seen like those cold fronts in the winter, they have super tornadoes up, say, Oklahoma and Missouri and Kansas, and by the time it gets to us, we barely have a thunderstorm. So that's where it really has to come in. But the technology is amazing, and the speed with which you can deliver it now.
So we touched on Hurricane Opal 20 years ago, Hurricane Opal, and you were one of the only, or maybe the only person still here that covered that.
And the meteorologist in the area right now, I'm the only one left, and I will never forget that. I actually was on the air, or we were on the air for 58 hours, and we didn't even realize it because we were so in tune to what was happening. We have such a huge responsibility during those events like that, that we just did what comes naturally. We give you what we think is going to happen, give you the current information and guide you along. But it's also on the other side has really brought down to the fact, which is why I love Bay County so much, is because after Hurricane Opal, this community came together like no community has ever come together before. It was like, you're hurting, I'm here to help. So that was a big impact on this area also. I think it actually brought the area closer together. And the other, if there's a good thing about Opal happening 20 years ago, we didn't have as much infrastructure out on the beach as we've got right now. So if we were to have another storm of that category, of that strength, we would probably have a different scenario to deal with. But the hardest thing to deal with out of those hurricanes are the tornadoes.
And let our viewers and listeners know kind of what broadcasters do. As you mentioned, you're here around the clock, and maybe many people don't understand that. And so if you're here, What's happening to your family? And I'm sure you're concerned about your family.
Right. Actually, our families understand. Most of them will leave town. If not, sometimes we've had them come right down here and spend time with us. But our families, they're always on our mind because, let's face it, we work and live in this community just like everybody else. But I think our families at times is at an advantage because we can talk to them, they know us, and we can be talking to them, a week before what really goes out into the rest of the community. So they're more aware of that. And we don't have to deal with it now. Like my wife, she knows this is our hurricane disaster kit. We keep it ready all the time. People's nature is to wait until something happens before they put it together. So yes, our families are really important. We worry about them, but then our responsibility here at times kind of overloads us to the fact where we're just so tuned in to what's going on. Because not only are we working in getting it out on the television and the radio, but we're working with all of our first responders, all of our law enforcement people. We have national media to deal with. So there's a whole realm of information that, let's face it, at times, Em, you don't even have a chance to think about anything but what you're doing.
You're just doing it.
You're just doing it because that's our job. That's why we're here.
Now, wanted to talk a little bit about your community service work.
Yeah.
I know you use your vacation to
Sure.
volunteer with Warrior Beach Retreat in
Right.
Linda Cope.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit about your volunteer work in the community.
That probably is the highlight of both my wife and I. These young men and women, I mean, it's utterly amazing that a society today, and I have to be careful how I phrase this, doesn't take time to understand what they're going through. You can look at one of our warriors that come in on this retreat, and they look just like you and me, or like Tom over there, like, dude, what's wrong with them? You don't realize that they've had their brains scrambled overseas because of bomb explosions and things of that nature. That's the most difficult part. The loss of a limb, that is probably the easiest thing to understand, but it's the mental aspect that we can see these young men and women, they're normal, what you consider normal, and then all of a sudden something triggers them. But the other side of that is the caregiver side. And God bless the caregivers for sticking with these young men because they didn't sign up for that. But this retreat just gives them that chance to interact and relax. And we say, hey, look, caregiver, you're important too. And our son was over in Iraq, and by the grace of God, he could have been one of those that came back with physical injuries. Now, he does have a little bit of PTSD, but again, he's getting along okay. But that is the part, that drive to help somebody else. And then, of course, with my military background, I understand. And that's part of the community that we're trying to get to realize, too, that you may not understand what's going on, but please be courteous and considerate of it. And the big thing is these guys and gals, they don't want your pity. They just want to be accepted for what they are. I always say, I really don't care if you're missing an arm, you're missing a leg. I care about what's in here, and I care about what's up here.
And I know you care about helping people who don't have enough food to eat.
Right.
You do a food drive every year.
Yeah, big United We Can food drive, plug. The one's coming up here, we're kicking that off the 13th of October. It was something that I started with Jeff Becker from the Panama City Police Department 6 years ago. And I feel that we're here to help one another. And I'm very, very fortunate to have the job that I do, where people understand where I'm coming from, because there's so many charities out there today that they may say they're doing this and they may not be doing that, but at least I can give them the credibility. So these four charities we take care of: Family Services, Catholic Services, Angels Pantry, and the Council on Aging. Those are the four, and this community just pitches in. So that's something that is very important to me. I feel like we're put here to help one another.
Absolutely, I do too. So let our viewers and listeners know where they can drop off food donations.
Oh, any Tyndall Credit Union, we actually have an account set up there where they can donate money. You can bring it by the TV station. Big Lots is with us. Vonda Gaynor is with us. She is the coupon queen.
Right.
Everybody knows her. She does a tremendous amount for us. I'll be working with Belinda Williamson up at the Lynn Haven Walmart. They set up something, and we have a big opening kickoff the 17th at the mall on the 17th of October from 10 to 2. And a representative from the charities will be there. I've got some entertainment coming, and our radio partners are going to be there. So, you know, there's a way where if you can't figure out what to do, just give me a call down here, and we'll take care of it.
Okay, so Jerry, what kind of advice do you have for someone listening or watching who thinks they may want to get into the same line of work you are in?
Education. Meteorology requires a lot of math. It requires a lot of physics. Even though we have our computers today to help us out, you have to have that basic understanding. And you have to understand communication. A lot of people don't know what communication is, and I always break it down. I say there's two parts. Every one of us can talk. That's the first part. But probably the most important part is listening. So you've got to be able to talk, you've got to be able to listen. And of course, being in the media, you got to listen to this thing stuck in your ear all the time, people talking to you. You also have to have a willingness to realize that you may not be right 100% of the time, but you need to be able to convey your ideas in such a manner where you're actually educating the public as you go along. You have to like people. You have to like people. If you don't like people, what are you doing in television?
You get mobbed every time you go to Publix and people, how do you do that? Or can you do that? Can you just run to Publix and get milk and get out of there?
Yes, I refuse to keep away from certain areas. But to me, I look at it and say, you know, that's good because people are watching. And let's face it, if it wouldn't be for the people watching, why would I have a job? But it gives me confidence in the fact that they realize that I'm not trying to put myself on a pedestal. I mean, I'm not some major anchor somewhere that's untouchable. I'm one of you. I live here. I work here. I own a home here. I fish here. I want to be part of the community. And that's it. And I welcome it because our viewers out there, our listeners, they have some tremendous ideas and we need to listen to them.
Real quick, how do you select your weather watchers?
Actually, I started that program many, many years ago, and I just put out an appeal on the air and said, if you want to be one, send me an email, give me a telephone call, and we still work it the same way. We try to keep it spread out around the Panhandle, and it's very, very important because the Panhandle itself is not, I mean, you got the major cities, but in central Holmes County, central Washington County, there's no large reporting cities, so we depend on our weather watchers because not only are they helping us with weather reports, they're also giving us tips on news. So that's how it just, if you want to be one, just go ahead and get a hold of me and we'll get you set up and everything.
Finally, what would our viewers and listeners find surprising about Jerry Tabatt?
Find surprising about me? Well, I don't know if I, no. Probably the biggest surprise is I will not take my work home with me. I'll come up here and give you 110%, but I cherish my days off. I have 2 days off to spend with my wife and our lovely grandkids, and I cherish that time, and I won't let work interfere with that if possible. Of course, if it's an emergency, I will, but yeah. And I want people to accept me as me. What you see is what you get.
How many grandkids, Jerry?
14.
14?
Yeah, and then we have to add 3 great-grandkids in there, too.
Oh, congratulations.
Yes.
It must be fun.
It is. It's a blast. And we tell our kids, if we'd known how great grandkids were, we'd have went to the grandkids, and you guys wouldn't even have been thought of. But yeah, it's great. Family life is so important to me. Life revolves around that family.
It is, and thanks so much for taking time
You're
out
welcome.
of your day.
Thank
I
you.
know we got to let you go and get things ready, so thanks for letting us come
Lunchtime.
down here. I know, thanks for letting us come down here
Appreciate
and talk
it.
to you, Jerry.
All right.
And that is a wrap for this edition of Rapline. Again, thanks to everybody at WMBB News 13 for inviting us down here, and thanks to Jerry Tabatt for taking time out of his day to tell us a little bit about what goes on behind the scenes of forecasting the weather. And a reminder, if you're thinking of adding a pet to your family, consider the adoption option. Check out one of the many local animal shelters in our area. You can also check out our Pet of the Week on our Facebook page. Rapline is a service of GC 90.7 FM and Gulf Coast State College. I'm Emily Balazs. Thanks for listening and watching, and have a great day.